I made it special for your nerves, Ma, Evan said, setting the cup down in front of me like it was some kind of peace offering after a fight. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Those were James' eyes, his daddy's. But they'd turned cold and flat a long time ago. I didn't take a sip. Not yet. Just yesterday, I'd found that envelope stuck between the electric bill and the feed store catalog. It was a brand new life insurance policy, with my name at the top and Evan's name at the bottom as the one who'd get the money. He barely hugged me when he walked in this morning. Just pushed open the screen door like he owned the place. You shouldn't be out here alone, he said, looking around my porch like he didn't grow up on it. Like he was casing the place, not visiting his mama. Now he was here with some fancy tea and fake concern, calling me Ma more times than I'd heard since Clinton was president. And I, old fool that I am, nodded and said, thank you. But I didn't drink it. Instead, I reached for the cup with my left hand, my knuckles stiff and twisted from arthritis, while my right hand slipped under the table, opening up that old velvet pouch I keep for heirloom seeds. I tilted the cup just enough to pour a little tea inside. That pouch is lined. Laura gave it to me for holding special things. She'll get a kick out of this one. You look good, Ma, Evan said, grinning too wide. For 78, I mean. His voice was too sweet, like a pie someone dumped too much sugar into to cover up that the fruit had gone bad. I leaned back in my chair and stared at him. Well, I'm not dead yet, I said. He laughed, sharp and empty, and reached for my hand across the table. I just want to reconnect. Be here for you. Funny. He hadn't been here when I fell off the porch steps last spring and needed someone to drive me to the clinic. Wasn't here after my hip surgery. And he sure wasn't here when the hurricane ripped part of the roof off and I had to fix it myself, swearing the whole time. But now, here he was, with his soft voice and hot tea, looking like a man who thinks he's playing chess and is already 3 moves ahead. The old grandfather clock struck 3 in the parlor. That thing always runs 5 minutes fast. Evan flinched just a little at the sound. Not much, but I noticed. He's nervous. Good. Well, I said, folding my napkin and dabbing my lips like a proper Southern lady, why don't you stay for dinner? I've got beans on the stove and cornbread in the oven. His face lit up like I'd handed him the house keys. Sure, Ma. That sounds real nice. I stood up slow, my knees popping louder than the floorboards, and walked to the kitchen. As I stirred the pot, I looked out the window toward the shed James built. He put it up with his own 2 hands. The wood still smells like cedar and pipe tobacco. If Evan thinks I'm soft just because I knit and talk to my plants, he's forgotten. Who raised him? The tea sat untouched on the table, cooling beside a vase of fresh-cut roses. Same kind I used to trim while Evan played in the yard, back before he got too busy to come home. In my apron pocket, the little seed pouch was safe. I'd take it to Laura first thing tomorrow. But tonight? Tonight I'd let him think he'd won. And sweet boy, he really shouldn't have called me obsolete. Not in my house. Not in my garden. This old woman's roots run deep. The next morning, after he left, I stood barefoot in the garden. My toes in the soil, the cold dew kissing my feet. I liked that feeling. It reminded me I'm still alive, still here, still paying attention. The rest of the tea? What I managed to save of it was sealed up tight in an old jelly jar. I cleaned and labeled it just like I do my peach preserves. April 12th, suspicious. That's all I wrote. Laura will know what it means. Out in the fog. I let my mind wander. After James died, Evan vanished like a stone tossed in a river. 1 minute, he was right beside me at the graveside, holding my arm so tight I thought I'd bruise. The next? Gone. No visits. Not even a call after my surgery. Laura had to drive me both ways, God bless her. I tried not to take it too hard. Men grieve quiet, I told myself. They get angry. They pull away. But the silence stretched on for years. Then last week, he called out of the blue. Just wanted to check in on you, Ma, he said. Thinking I might come visit. I should have known. People don't just change overnight unless they want something. And Evan? He never wanted anything that didn't help him out. Even as a little boy, he used to sneak sugar cubes from the tea tin, thinking I didn't notice. I let it slide. Figured a little sweetness might make this bitter world easier to swallow. But now? Now I wonder. Maybe Evan's always had that hunger for things that didn't belong to him. He could turn on the charm when he wanted to. Laura used to say he could melt butter with his voice. But even when he was a teenager, I saw something in his eyes. A little flicker, like he was always working an angle, always waiting to see what he could get from you before you realized what was happening. Still, I tried to see the good in him. I told myself it was nice he came back. Told myself maybe this was a second chance. But real second chances? They come with honesty, not with strange-tasting tea and an insurance policy I never signed. I spent most of the morning clipping roses, watching the road. No sign of Evan. He was probably back in town, making calls, getting things lined up. What he didn't know was that while he was out in the backyard last night, pretending to admire the garden, I'd gone into his jacket pocket. Found his phone, unlocked, of course. Cocky as ever. I saw recent calls to a number just labeled DC. A quick search told me it belonged to some smooth-talking scam artist. Specializes in financial consulting for seniors. In plain English, he targets old folks. I looked around my house, my handmade curtains, the quilt folded. Over the rocker, James' old pipe still resting on the mantel. This home may be simple, but it's mine. Every wall has stories. Every floorboard has heard my steps. And now my only son wants to cash me in like some forgotten savings bond. I pressed my thumb to one of James' old apothecary labels. He used to say, every plant has a purpose. But some are poison dressed up pretty. People, I reckon, are the same. Tomorrow, I'll take that jelly jar of tea to Laura. She's always had a sharp eye and a nurse's instincts. If there's something wrong in that tea, she'll find it. And Evan? Let him keep smiling and calling me Ma like it means something. That's fine. Because I'm planting something too. And when it grows, it won't be what he expects. When I showed up at Laura's door holding that jar like it was holy water, she didn't ask a thing. Just wiped her hands on her apron and said, "Come in." Her kitchen smelled like cloves and old wood polish, just like I remembered. Looked the same as it did in 1989, with lace curtains and her spice rack all in alphabetical order. I handed her the jar. My hands were shaking just a little. "He brought me tea," I said. "I didn't drink it." She held it up to the light. "Looks harmless." "So does he," I muttered. Laura didn't smile. She just pulled out her old testing kit, looked like a tackle box, but smarter than most doctors I'd met. She dipped a swab into the tea and got to work like she'd been waiting for this day. We sat at the table in silence while the wind stirred her chimes outside, soft and cold, making the back of my neck prickle. "Why now?" she finally asked. "What brought him back?" I stared at her pale blue teapot. Same one she'd used when James passed. "I found a new life insurance policy," I said. "In my name. Evan's the only one who gets anything." Laura didn't blink. "Did you sign anything?" "Not that I know of." She turned back to her test. "Low-dose sedative," she said after a moment. "Just enough to keep you sleepy, confused, quiet. If he keeps at it, you'll start thinking something's wrong with you." My chest tightened. I thought I was ready to hear it. But the truth always hits harder when it's spoken out loud. "Could be prescription," she added. "Or brought in from somewhere else. He's careful. But this ain't chamomile, Doris." I looked down at my hands. Still stained with dirt from this morning's gardening. James used to call them honest hands. Laura reached over and covered them with hers. "You know what this is, don't you?" I nodded. "It's a setup. He wants to wear me down. Make it look like I can't take care of myself. Get me to sign something, or worse." Outside, the wind picked up. The chimes clanged louder. A storm was coming, I could feel it in my knees. "I'll help you," Laura said, calm and steady. "We're not letting him get away with this. And that's the thing about old women, sweetheart. We may bake pies. We may wear shawls. We may cry during the Christmas pageant. But when someone messes with the people we love or treats us like we're weak, we don't break. We harden." Woman who knows how to wait, knows how to listen, knows how to fight back without raising her voice. Like kiln-fired clay, I've been shaped by heat and pressure, and honey, I don't crack easy. Laura tucked that jar of tea in her freezer like it was evidence from a crime scene, wedged behind an old pork roast, next to the frozen peas. "We'll get this to someone official," she'd said, voice firm. "But first, you play along. Smile. Don't give him a reason to run." I nodded. "Oh, idesmila." I'd smile like the sun on Sunday. "Evan thinks I'm weak. Thinks I don't see through him. Thinks I'm confused. He's wrong." Laura handed me a slice of lemon pound cake, wrapped neat in wax paper. "Keep up your strength," she said. I drove home with the cake on the passenger seat, staring ahead, jaw tight. My chest burned with a slow, steady anger, an old heat I hadn't felt since James's funeral, when Evan disappeared like mist off the lake, quiet and cold. Storm clouds gathered low behind the mountains, dark and full of promise. My porch light blinked on as I pulled into the driveway, casting long shadows across the gravel. Inside, everything looked the same, teacups still in the sink, James's favorite chair still empty, but something in me had shifted. I didn't cry. Didn't pace the floor. I made myself a real cup of tea, chamomile, pure and untainted, and sat by the window, watching the rain come down in soft sheets. I let the night fall around me. Let the quiet settle in. I was done reacting. From now on, I'd act. Tomorrow, I told myself, Tomorrow I'd call him. I'd say the tea helped, that I was feeling calmer, that I wanted to spend more time together. I'd make it easy for him. Let him think he was winning. Because Evan thinks he's hunting an old woman in the woods. But he doesn't know this forest still belongs to me. Yesterday, I picked up the phone around mid-morning, same time I used to call him back when he answered his mother. I softened my voice to syrup. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, sweet as butter on a warm biscuit. "Just wanted to say thank you. That tea helped me sleep like a baby." He paused. Just a second. Then that smooth, fake loving voice slid through the line. "See? Told you it'd help your nerves." "I've been thinking," I said, wrapping the phone cord around my finger like I used to when James called from the clinic. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I've been too proud. Maybe I do need help." Hook, line, and sinker. I heard the grin in his voice. "I'd love to stay for a while, Ma. You shouldn't be out there alone." I almost laughed. I've been alone longer than he's been shaving. I raised goats, buried a husband, and patched a leaking roof during a hurricane. I've made pickles that won ribbons in 5 counties. But I let the moment hang. "Maybe this weekend," I said, just a little tremble in my voice. "You could help me with, well, some important papers." "Oh, absolutely," he said, too fast. "I'll bring everything we need." I didn't ask what everything was. I already knew. Later, I stepped onto the porch and sat on the swing, sipping my own tea, mint and honey, clean and honest. I watched the birds flit through the feeder. The wind rustled the pines like they were whispering secrets. That's when I saw him. Across the road. Rental car. Windows down. Pretending to scroll through his phone. He wasn't coming this weekend. He never left. He's been here the whole time. Watching me. Waiting. Circling, like a vulture waiting for something to drop. But my stomach didn't sink. My hand didn't shake. I just rocked gently, let him think I hadn't seen him. Inside, I opened James's old ledger, the one where he kept planting notes and harvest records, and added a new entry under April. "Evan's still here. Watching. He wants the story to look clean. He's not just after money. He wants it to look good, a dutiful son, helping his poor, tired mama. No questions. No mess. No trail. But what he doesn't know is I've always been paying attention. All the years he made excuses, forgot my birthday, left Christmas cards unopened. That time he said he needed gas money and went to Vegas instead. I took notes then, and I'm taking notes now." After dinner, I went up to the attic and pulled out James's old tape recorder. It still works. Still sharp. I changed the batteries, slipped it into my cardigan pocket. Just for practice, for now. Because this time, I won't be the one confused. Or cornered. Evan thinks I'm just some old lady with a pension and a few teacups. But what I really am, is a storm he never saw coming. Evan thinks he's being clever. He thinks I'm not paying attention, that I'm some tired old woman who's easy to fool. But he's wrong. I'm letting him get close, letting him think I'm not suspicious. The door's unlocked, the lights are on, the forest looks still. But you hear me, sweetheart? That calm? It's not because I've given up. It's because I'm planning. I spent most of the afternoon up in the attic, digging through dusty boxes. My hands got filthy, covered in dirt and old memories. James never trusted computers, bless him. Said paper was safer, harder to hack. So he kept everything handwritten, notes in the margins of seed catalogs, old receipts, phone numbers. That habit of his might just be the thing that saves me now. I found a file box hidden behind some Christmas lights. Inside were Evan's old things, high school report cards, a thank you card from his first job, and tucked in with it all, a manila folder labeled E. James Whitlow Business. My knees were killing me, but I sat right there on the attic floor and flipped through it. Page after page of financial messes. Overdrawn bank accounts, credit card bills with red circles around the worst parts. Cards I'd never even seen before. All maxed out with sky-high interest. And then I found it, a phone bill. It showed recent calls made from the landline in the den. That old phone barely rings anymore, except for the garden club or spam calls. But there they were, calls to a number I didn't recognize, one with a 3005 area code. I wrote the number down on the back of a seed envelope and made my way downstairs. Every step on those narrow attic stairs creaked like it was warning me to stop, but I didn't. I went straight to the phone and called Laura. "I've got a number," I told her. "Evan's been calling it. From my house." She didn't ask how I figured it out. Just said, "Come by in the morning. I'll see what I can dig up." After we hung up, I leaned on the kitchen counter, watching the kettle start to steam. My hand found James' old mug, still chipped, still perfect. I remembered Evan as a little boy, helping me wash the dishes. He used to make bubble beards and call himself Bubblebeard the Brave. I used to laugh so hard, tears would roll down my cheeks. Now, here I am, scrubbing away fingerprints and wondering if my own son is trying to erase me. I pulled the tea bag from the cup and looked down at my reflection in the murky water. I didn't look weak, just worn out, like tree bark that's made it through 100 winters. On a whim, I went into Evan's old bedroom, now my sewing room. His laptop was still there, left open like he didn't expect me to even touch it. Password was still Whitlow 1997, the year of his first bankruptcy, if I remember right. I opened his email. He'd been talking to someone named Fax. That name matched the one on the call logs. I read the last few emails, holding my breath. She's alone. No support system. I'm easing her into it. Sedative worked. Soon she'll sign. Need to move fast. Once she's out, I can push the POA and update the will. Land's worth more than we thought. Realtor buddy says at least $600,000, maybe more with timber rights. Get papers ready. I just stared at the screen. Then I hit print. The hallway printer groaned like an old hound dog but did its job, page by page. I clipped the stack with one of Laura's old flower-shaped paper clips. She gave me those years ago, said they'd make boring things pretty. I slid the papers into a folder labeled Tax Returns 2008 and felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. For a long time, I thought Evan had lost his way. I hoped he'd come back around. But now I see the truth, he didn't get lost. He walked away. And now he's come back, not for forgiveness, but to take what's mine. Well, let's see what he does when his mama's got the receipts. When I got to Laura's place, she opened the door before I could even knock. Took one look at me and didn't waste time with small talk. You bring the goods? She asked, nodding me inside. I handed her the folder. She raised an eyebrow. Tax returns, huh? Creative. She spread the pages out on her dining table, reading them like a jigsaw puzzle. Her glasses slid down her nose as her lips got tighter with every line she read. I'd arrest him myself if I still had my badge, she muttered. I smiled, just barely. We didn't sit. Neither of us wanted to. Too much left to do. The air in Laura's house felt heavy, like one of those summer storms that hasn't let loose yet but is about to. You could feel something crackling in it. She finally turned to me and said, I know someone. Miles Tully. Used to be a detective. Now he consults for the county. Smart guy. Grew up near Burnsville. Me a favor. I didn't ask what kind of favor. With Laura, you don't need to. She's helped half the town in one way or another, fixed messes folks couldn't even talk about out loud. She picked up the phone right then and there. No hesitaste. It's happening again, she said into the receiver, her voice soft but steady. But this time, it's someone I love. She listened for a second, then added, yes, she's got proof, emails, phone records, even a little audio. And a jar of suspicious tea, if you can believe it. She gave a small, dry smile. I knew that'd get your attention. After she hung up, she looked at me and said, he's coming tomorrow. Just wants to talk. Quiet like. You don't have to do anything but tell the truth. That part, at least, I could still do. We sat in her sunroom with real tea this time. The scent of jasmine floated in through the screen door, light and sweet. But my mind kept drifting back to Evan's email. She's alone. No support system. No support system? That boy must have forgotten who raised him. Yes, I live by myself. But I've never been lonely. There's a difference. I've got church ladies who'd be on my porch with casseroles and pitchforks if I so much as hinted at trouble. The folks at the feed store have known me since I bought my first chicken. I've got roots here. People. History. Evans. Betting on my silence. He's betting I'll just roll over. But I'm not a wallflower. I'm a widow. And I haven't forgotten how to fight. Later that night, back home, I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out my little voice recorder. I hadn't even meant to catch anything, just habit. Funny how muscle memory works when your nerves are awake. Earlier that day, Evan had called to check in. Told me he was looking forward to the weekend, said he'd bring the documents from fax. I played it back 3 times. Clear. As a bell. Every word. Then I tucked the recorder into the back of James' old shaving kit, right next to the straight razor he hadn't used in years. Felt like the right place for it, one kind of blade next to another. Before bed, I wrote a quick note in my journal. He thinks I've grown soft. He doesn't see the flint under the moss. That's all right. I want him looking the other way when I light the match. And as I turned off the light, I whispered into the quiet, let him come. Because here's the truth, the trick to a good trap is making it look like a gift. And Lord knows, I've spent a lifetime wrapping up sacrifices in ribbon and handing them out like kindness. So when Evan pulled up in that shiny rental car Friday afternoon, with his slick grin and a half-zipped suitcase. I met him on the porch with a peach cobbler and a smile. "Oh, Ma, you didn't have to cook," he said, already sizing up the house like it was a prize at an auction. "Well, you're my guest," I said, brushing a bit of flour off my apron. "And I was thinking, while you're here, maybe we could take a look at the will." He paused. Just a second. But I saw it, the flash in his eyes, that greedy little spark. "You've been thinking about your estate?" he asked, his voice all sugar. "I have," I said gently, keeping my tone steady. "Been alone a long time. Thought it made sense to get things in order. You're my only child, after all." I could almost hear the wheels spinning in his head, like flies buzzing over a ripe melon. "Of course, Ma. That's the smart thing to do." Over dinner, I played the part. I talked about how the stairs were getting tough. How the garden was too much for me now. I even let my hand shake a little when I reached for the salt. "You ever think about selling the place?" he asked, real casual, lifting his wine glass. I looked out the window toward the woods. James and I used to walk there on Sunday evenings. The trees catch the light just right, like stained glass in a church. I whispered, like it was hard to say out loud. "I've had offers." He perked right up. "Really? Anyone serious?" "There was a man from Atlanta," I said, shaking my head a little. "Something about timber rights. But I wouldn't know how to even start." "I can help with that," Evan said, way too quick. "I've got a buddy who does real estate law. We could get the ball rolling this weekend." I smiled and let the silence stretch out a bit. Let him think he was winning. "Wouldn't hurt to learn," I said at last. "Maybe this house has served its time." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. And I raised mine, too. "To knowing exactly what's worth keeping." After dinner, Evan stepped outside to make a phone call, probably to that slippery friend of his, Fax. While he was out there, I accidentally left a folder on the coffee table, labeled nice and clear, will and house deed. Inside? Just some old church bulletins and a peach pie recipe from a 1992 Southern Living. But the outside looked official enough to tempt a snake, and I knew Evan wouldn't be able to resist. From the kitchen, I watched him open it. Just a flicker of confusion crossed his face before that familiar slick little smirk slid into place. That's when I knew the trap was working. Later, I set up the guest room. Laid out fresh towels, fluffed the pillows, even placed one of James's old flannel robes on the bed, just a little reminder of the man who used to run this house. Before I went to bed, I checked the photo frame in the hallway where I'd hidden a small recorder. Still blinking red. Still working. I'd tucked it right next to a picture of Evan at 16, all smiles, standing between James and me on a sunny 4th of July. Back when he still belonged here. Lying in bed, I thought about James again. He used to say, "A gardener's job isn't just to grow things, it's to prune. Leave dead branches too long, and they'll rot the whole root." That night, I slept soundly. The trap was set, and Evan? He was already caught, just didn't know it yet. I knew he'd try something, but I didn't think he'd move so fast. Saturday night came after a long, syrupy day full of fake smiles and too many "Ma, let me get that for you." I made him pot roast and poured myself a small glass of wine, real food, real trust. Or so it seemed. Halfway through dessert, I let myself sway a little. Dropped my spoon on purpose. Let my words blur just a bit at the edges. "Oh," I murmured, pressing a hand to my forehead, "I must be more tired than I thought." Evan leapt up like I'd clutched my chest. "You okay, Ma?" "And maybe just a little lie down," I slurred, "just barely." He rushed me over to the couch, a little too eager, and tucked a blanket over me like he was already writing the eulogy. "You just rest. Don't worry about a thing." "I think maybe you should call someone," I whispered, weak and slow. No, he said quickly. "You just need rest. Calling people just makes things worse." And there it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. The hesitation. The choice not to help. I closed my eyes and listened as his footsteps faded down the hall. He thought he had me. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Laura was already waiting in the driveway. I'd told her, porch light off by 8:30 meant showtime, whether I was fine or not. At 8:37 sharp, she came knocking, hard. "Doris," she called sweetly, like it was all just coincidence. "You didn't answer my text about Sunday service. Just figured I'd drop by." Evan opened the door, and he looked like he'd swallowed a hornet. "Oh, hi Miss Laura," he said, trying to smile. "She's, resting. Not feeling well," she said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. "Doris never skips church prep. I'll just pop in for a second." "I don't think," he tried, but she was already walking past him, fast and sure. She came into the living room and found me asleep, one eye slightly open. She patted my hand just like she did when I came out of anesthesia after my surgery last spring. "Hey there," she whispered. "You want him gone?" I blinked once. That was our code. She turned back to Evan, voice all firm now. "You know, Evan, I think she might need to be checked out. Sudden fatigue at her age? Better to be safe." "She just needs rest," he said, more forcefully this time. "I've got it handled." Laura looked at him long and slow. "I'm sure you think you do." The room went quiet. I sat up slightly under the blanket and said, "Laura, could you help me to the kitchen? I think I need some water." "Of course, hon," she said, slipping an arm under mine. Evan didn't try to stop us. He just stood there, frozen. Caught. You could see it in his eyes, he'd lost the script. In the kitchen, with the faucet running and the walls thin, I leaned close and whispered, "He didn't call for help." "Exactly what I needed to hear," she whispered back. I sipped my water, real water this time, and looked out the window. Evan was pacing on the porch, muttering into his phone. The porch light cast his shadow across the floor, long and jumpy like a man unraveling. He was losing control, and he knew it. That night, Laura insisted on staying over. Said just in case. Evan didn't argue. In fact, he offered to sleep in his car. Now that was interesting, considering he'd claimed the guest bed like it was his birthright just hours earlier. He took the couch instead. And me? I slept like a rock. You know, when a snake strikes early, it's not because it's brave, it's because it's scared. And scared things? They mess up. That Sunday morning was quiet. The sky was gray, and the fog was so thick it felt like the mountains were holding their breath. You couldn't hear much. Everything felt hushed and heavy, like the world was waiting for something. Evan was still knocked out cold on the couch, snoring like a freight train. Mouth wide open, one sock half off, and his phone clutched tight to his chest like it was the Bible and he'd just sinned big. I tiptoed past him in my house slippers. Not because I was scared. I wasn't. I was just waiting. Patient. I opened the hallway closet, reached behind some old photo albums, and pulled out what I'd hidden 3 days earlier, a small black recorder, tucked behind our 1993 family reunion photo. There we were, James holding a plate of ribs, Evan back when he still had freckles. And a smile, and me in a denim dress I wouldn't be caught dead in now. The recorder blinked green, it was still on. I took it to the kitchen, rewound it, and hit play. First came static, like walking on dry pine needles. Then Evan's voice, clear as day. "No, she's not going to cause problems. Half the time she doesn't even know what day it is." A pause. Some papers shuffling. "I've got the original copy of the will. Yeah, just need her to re-sign. She won't know the difference." My hand curled into a fist. "I'll have her out of there in a few weeks. Either she signs the POA confused, or I'll use the doctor excuse. Laura's no real threat, just a nosy old lady." The other voice was muffled, but I caught one word loud and clear, timber. Then Evan again, bigger property than I thought. Forests full of hardwood. KFAX says we can move fast once I'm on the deed. Just need her to look unfit. That was enough. I turned off the recorder and stared at my reflection in the shiny side of the coffee pot. My face looked calm. Too calm. I slipped the recorder into my apron pocket and sat down. Not long after, Evan stumbled in, yawning like a man who thinks he's earned rest. "Morning, Ma. Sleep okay?" "I did," I said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "Better than expected." He reached for the sugar without even noticing my hand wasn't shaking anymore. For the first time in a long while, it was steady. Solid. I felt sharp. "I was thinking," I said, handing him his cup. "Maybe I could talk to that lawyer friend of yours. Get that will stuff moving." His eyes lit up like the 4th of July. "You sure?" I nodded. "Might as well." He pulled out his phone faster than you can blink. "I'll call him now. You'll like him, smart guy. Good at explaining things for folks your age." Folks your age. I sipped my coffee and smiled. Sounds perfect. He stepped outside to take the call, pacing just beyond the window where I could see every twitch in his mouth, every greedy gleam in his eyes. Snake in the garden. He thought I didn't know what he was planning. But what he didn't see, what he couldn't see, was that I'd already planted something stronger, the truth. And I'd caught him saying it out loud. Not just to me, to someone who could do something about it. I didn't go to church that morning. I had another kind of prayer to answer. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Recording saved. Timber mentioned. Document manipulation confirmed. Witness, me. God help him." Then I called Laura. "Tell Detective Miles," I said. "The harvest is ready." Time's always been on my side. I've learned to wait, through James's illness, through Evan's silent years, through every Sunday I set an extra place at the table that stayed empty. And now, I wait again. But this time, I'm not waiting in sadness. I'm waiting with purpose. After that day, I let things settle, like dirt in a creek. I didn't rush. I didn't press. I just let Evan get comfortable, let him think I needed him. He even started humming in the mornings, said stuff like, "We should get that. We'll sign soon, Ma. For your peace of mind." I'd just nod, like I'd never thought about peace before. Little by little, he dropped the act. He started checking the mailbox like it was his. Asked if I'd made a spare key. Started pointing at bills I could cancel. "You won't need cable much longer, Ma," he said. "Not once we move you somewhere simpler." He thought I was slipping. But I was watching. And waiting. I played the part perfectly. Misplaced my reading glasses on purpose, called the vacuum the blender. Took a little longer to answer simple questions. "Oh, I'm just tired," I'd say, rubbing my temples. But the truth? I wasn't confused at all. I was watching, listening, and writing everything down. This week alone, I filled 2 full pages in my notebook. Times, dates, exact quotes. Like when Evan mumbled to himself while digging through my kitchen drawer, "This place is a gold mine." Or when I overheard him on speakerphone again with that man from KFAX, standing right outside my window by the rose trellis. "Once I get her to sign the quick claim, we can put it on the market next month. Conservatorship's the backup if she gets stubborn." Stubborn? Please. I've been called worse by far better men. I passed my notes quietly to Laura, who passed them on to Detective Miles. No drama, no fuss. Just the truth, gathered slow and careful, like tomatoes off the vine. Miles told her he was impressed. Said it was the cleanest trail he'd ever seen. Meanwhile, I let Evan settle in. Gave him room to get comfortable. I let him handle the shopping and the phone calls. Let him tell the neighbors I was resting. More these days. He even answered the phone when Pastor Ray called. "She's napping again," he said. "But I'll pass along your message. I'm helping manage things now." I smiled when I heard that, because every word he spoke, every step he took, left a footprint. And footprints? They're easy to follow. Funny thing is, I did start napping. Real naps. The kind where you let your whole body relax, because for once, you're not carrying the load all by yourself. Someone else is keeping watch now. Detective Miles told Laura they're close. They just need one last thing, a signed document. Proof that Evan really plans to take what doesn't belong to him. And that part? That's coming soon. Because today, I told Evan, as sweetly as I could, I think I'm ready to wrap things up. The house, the will, all of it. His face lit up like a man holding 4 aces at the card table. "Maybe we could have dinner," I added. "One last proper meal to celebrate." He nodded so fast I thought his head might fall off. As I stood to clear our plates, I whispered to myself, "You better eat well, boy. Because pretty soon, you'll be choking on the truth." That night, the first cold snap rolled through. The wind whispered through the trees like voices from the past. I woke up before the sun, same way I used to when James had early shifts at the clinic. Something in the air told me the balance had shifted. After all this waiting, the seesaw had finally tipped my way. Laura called just after 8 a.m. Her voice was low, steady. "Miles wants to meet today," she said. I didn't ask why. I just said, "Back porch." Noon. Evan was already out. Said he had something important to pick up in town. He took my car, of course. His rental disappeared Thursday. He said the company needed it back. I didn't argue. I handed over the keys. Let him drive. And thank God I did. When Detective Miles stepped onto my porch, wrapped in a coat that smelled faintly like wood smoke, he handed me a photo. It was my car, parked outside a repair shop 2 towns over. Inside, the brake line had been cleanly cut. Not worn. Not broken. Sliced. Miles looked at me, calm but unreadable. He told the mechanic he noticed a leak. Asked for a quote. Never. Came back to get it. I felt the air leave my chest, not in fear, but in cold, clear realization. Was he waiting for me to drive it? I asked. Miles didn't answer right away. "If you'd taken that car through these hills," he said finally, "you might not have made it." I folded my hands in my lap. "Then it's time." He handed me a flash drive. Evidence. Audio recordings. Emails. Photos taken by a plainclothes officer who'd been watching the house. "You've done most of the work," he said. "Now we just need one last move. Something formal. Something he can't explain away." I nodded. "He'll get it tonight." We didn't say goodbye. Didn't have to. After he left, I sat on the porch swing for a while and let myself feel it. Not fear. Not sorrow. Just the deep ache of realizing my own son, the boy I raised, might have been willing to let me die for a check. Up above, a hawk flew by, silent and sharp. I opened my notebook and wrote it all down. Confirmed brake tampering. Intent clear. Final move coming. Then I went inside and set the dinner table. Linen napkins. The good china. James's old place setting, just for symmetry. I even lit the candles. I lit the tapered candles James and I got for our 15th anniversary, the ones we only brought out when company came over. Tonight wasn't just dinner, sweetheart. Tonight was the show. Curtains up. Evan came home around 6, all smiles and swagger. Dropping his keys on the counter like he owned the place. Something smells amazing, he said, sniffing the air. I thought we'd celebrate, I told him. I've decided to finalize the will. Get everything in order tomorrow. He blinked, then smiled like he'd just won the lottery. That's great, Ma. Really great. I poured the wine and handed him a glass. Where's yours? He asked. Oh, I'll stick with tea, I said, setting my mug down. You know it helps settle my stomach. He raised his glass. To family, he said. I clinked my teacup. Against his. To closure. And I knew, right then, as the candlelight danced across his face, that the balance had finally shifted. He didn't realize it yet. He still thought he was the one pulling the strings. Still thought I was the fool. But tomorrow, he'd wake up to a different kind of morning. And the only knock at the door would come with a badge. That morning, I polished the silver with steady hands. No shaking. No second guessing. I pressed the linen napkins and seasoned the roast. James's old cornbread recipe, just the right amount of sugar, was warming in the oven. The whole house smelled like comfort. Like finality. Evan wandered in around 10, still in his robe, rubbing the sleep from his eyes like a man who thought he had the world in his back pocket. I forgot how nice it is to sleep here, he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. So quiet out in the woods. Peaceful, I said, smiling into my teacup. Yes, peaceful. He didn't notice I hadn't taken a sip. After lunch, I mentioned I'd invited a few folks over for dinner. Oh, he asked, trying to sound casual, but his jaw gave him away, tight, clenched. Just Laura and my attorney, I said. Thought it might be a good time to start moving forward on the paperwork. You already called Harmon, he asked, voice going tight. Of course, I said lightly. He's handled everything since James passed. He's practically family. That word, family, hung heavy in the air between us, twisted by everything that had happened. I figured we'd make a night of it, I continued. Good food. Some toasts. Closure. He nodded slowly, his eyes scanning, calculating. Sounds great, Ma. By 5 o'clock, the table was set just the way Mama taught me. 3 glasses at each place. Fresh goldenrod in the center, the kind James used to tuck behind my ear when he thought I needed cheering up. Laura arrived first, wearing that plum cardigan she always says makes her feel respectable but suspicious. I gave her a wink. She brought a blackberry cobbler and a purse big enough to hide a recorder, or a revolver, if need be. Then came Richard Harmon, my lawyer for over 30 years. Steady hands, neat collar, and that calm, slow voice that's walked me through more tough choices than I can count. Evan greeted them like the good host he imagined himself to be. Well, this is lovely, he said. I'm so glad Ma is finally taking charge of her future. Indeed, Richard said, glancing my way, his eyes saying what his words didn't need to. We ate. We laughed. I even let Evan carve the roast like he was still the man of the house. Then, as dessert was served, I set down my fork. I'd like to make an announcement before we sign anything tonight. Evan sat up straighter. Laura folded her napkin neatly in her lap. Richard clicked open his pen. I stood. I've decided not to leave the house to my son. The room went still. Evan blinked. What? I looked at him. Really looked. And what I saw wasn't my little boy anymore. It was a man so eaten up with greed he couldn't even fake looking hurt. I'm transferring the house to the Appalachian Conservation Trust, I said, calm and firm. Effective immediately. In James's name. You're what? His voice cracked like a teenage boy's. It's what your father would have wanted, I said. To protect the land, the trees, this home. Forever. But Ma, no. My voice cut clean through the air. No more, Ma. Not tonight. Laura's eyes glistened. But she held her chin high. Richard pulled out a second stack of papers. Not the ones Evan thought we were signing. These had already been notarized. This morning. My signature, firm and clear. Evan went pale as he realized what was happening. This can't be legal, he muttered. Oh, it's more than legal, Richard said. It's airtight. Evan stood up so fast he knocked over his wine glass. The red spilled across the white tablecloth, dark and blooming, like blood. And then I handed him a small, plain white envelope. Inside was a flash drive. What's this? He asked, voice shaky. Just something for you to think about, I said, folding my hands in my lap. A few conversations you've had. Some promises you made to KFAX. A little talk about brake lines. He stared at me, color draining from his face. You think I trapped you, he hissed. I didn't trap you, I said quietly. You walked right in all by yourself. The room went still. Nobody said a word. I stood up, calm and slow, and walked out. I passed the hallway pictures, the old coat rack where James's worn-out hat still hung, and that door Evan once believed would be his one day. I didn't look back. See, sweetheart, that dinner wasn't about celebrating anything. It was about something deeper, about making something right. I wasn't just taking back control of my life. I was taking back my story, my place in it. My legacy. It all started with the teacups. The good ones, bone china, white with tiny blue cornflowers around the edges. James gave them to me on our 25th anniversary. I only brought them out when company truly mattered. And tonight? Tonight, they were perfect for the moment. Evan sat stiff at the table. He hadn't even touched the envelope or the flash drive sitting next to his plate. Laura and Richard had stepped outside, giving us privacy, but they knew the plan. They were waiting for the sign. I moved with care, not a single shake in my hands. Thought we could share a quiet cup, I told him. Before everything becomes final. He watched me like a man walking through fog. You really going through with this? I poured the hot water. Steam rose up in slow curls, like little ghosts. I didn't answer. Just slid his cup toward him and sat down with mine. 2 cups, 2 saucers. Both looked the same, except one had a small difference. He stared into the tea, then back at me. So that's it? You're cutting me out of everything? I took a sip. Real chamomile. Real calm. I'm not cutting you out, I said. I'm letting you go. He took a big drink, probably expecting the usual mix of herbs and honey. But tonight, I'd added something else. Nothing dangerous, just something to loosen him up. Laura had found it for me. A legal, low-dose sedative. Just enough to make him talk. To trip him up a little. Not to hurt him. Just to get the truth out. He blinked, rubbed his forehead. Something's not right, I leaned in. Let's talk about the brake line. His head jerked up. I didn't, what are you saying? You said it yourself, remember? I said, repeating his own words back to him. She won't drive it again anyway. I watched the color drain from his face. I pulled a little recorder from my pocket, pressed play. His voice filled the room. Once I get her to sign the quick claim, we can put it on the market. She's confused half the time. Just need to make it look like she's declining. Evan reached for the recorder, but his hands were clumsy now. You're setting me up, he snapped. No, Evan, I said, my voice colder now. You did that to yourself. Right then, the front door opened. Laura walked in with Detective Miles beside her. No flashing lights. No shouting. Just quiet confidence. The kind of presence that says, we already know. Evan tried to stand, but his legs wobbled. What is this, he mumbled. You drugged me. Let's not be dramatic, I said as I rose to my feet. You've been doing it to me for months. I figured you'd appreciate the experience. Miles stepped up beside him, gentle but firm. Mr. Whitlow, he said, you need to come with me. We've got some things to talk about. Evan looked at me then, wide-eyed, panicked. You planned all this? I looked at the teacup. The one James gave me. The same kind Evan had used to slip things into my drinks. No, I said. I prepared this. He couldn't fight back. Couldn't even think straight. Miles guided him out the door like a man too drunk to find his way home. Only Evan wasn't going home. He was headed to a cell, with a case that was already sealed tight. When the door closed behind them, I stood there in the quiet. The clock ticked on. The table was still, with 2 teacups, one empty, one untouched. I carried the full cup to the sink and poured it out. No point keeping leftovers. Justice doesn't need a second helping. By the time sunlight filtered in through the trees and touched the windowsill, I was already gone. Boots on. Cardigan buttoned. Suitcase packed. I left a note for Laura on the kitchen table, right next to the blue teacup Evan had used. The house was clean. His bag still sat by the door. He hadn't even packed. Guess he thought he was staying. Guess he thought wrong. I took James's old pickup, it still purrs if you know how to talk to her, and drove into town. Parked behind the co-op, slipped away without a fuss. Caught a ride with the pastor's wife heading toward Burnsville. I told her I had someone to visit. She didn't ask questions. At 7:12 a.m., Laura texted, he's up. He's panicking. Cops just pulled in. I didn't answer. I let her handle the rest. Let him sit in that silence. Because sometimes, the loudest kind of justice is the quiet kind. You know what real power looks like? It's not yelling. It's not revenge. It's walking away. Just disappearing. Letting the person who tried to control you stand alone in the mess they made with their own 2 hands. Evan would figure. it out, piece by piece. The recorder? Gone. The flash drive? Vanished. That fake will he worked so hard on? Nothing but ashes in the fireplace. I bet he'd call out for me. Maybe he'd yell. Maybe he'd beg. Or maybe, just maybe, he'd finally realize I was never confused. Not even once. He'd open every drawer in a panic and find them empty. He'd step outside, look at the land he thought would be his, and know deep down, it never would be. And when the officers asked him to come quietly, no one would be there to defend him. No mom to cry for him, to say he just needed help. All he'd have left was his name, and a thick, ugly file that told the real story. That day, I stayed at Laura's cabin out in the hills. Just a tiny place near a trout stream where the world feels quiet and simple. She left me clean sheets and a little note that said, "Rest. He's handled." So I did. I sat on the porch and watched the sunlight turn into long shadows stretching over the ridge. The wind smelled like pine trees and river stones. Clean. Honest. That night, I cooked for myself. Just a simple pan of eggs and tomatoes, the way James always liked them on cold mornings. And when I finally climbed into bed, I looked up at the ceiling, smiled to myself, and whispered, "You did good, old girl." Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight. It's to leave. Not theirs. No big speech. Just the soft click of a door closing behind you. Quiet. Final. Strong.